Hey y'all, I'm Logan FROMME with the Backwoodsman Institute. That video segment you've seen right before this was a video of a squirrel eating. And what they do is they use their teeth and they got to cut through the outside shell, the whole of that nut, in order to get to the food on the inside. So that sound that you just heard is called cutting. Now when you're a squirrel hunter walking through the woods, you can hear that sound. Kind of reminds me of grinding teeth. So that's what I listen for, and that can give a squirrel's position away. That and all the nuts dropping around. They don't have to be jumping through the tree in order for me to know they're there. That cutting sound is a key indication that there's a squirrel present. Alright, this video right here is long overdue. A while back, Dad made a squirrel hunting video where he showed some of the calls he uses to either give their position away or to calm them down. One of those calls was the cutter. Now, I had a lot of followers contact me and Dad saying, hey, where'd you get that cutter at? We can't find it, what side or whatever. Well, Dad got this cutting call years ago, probably over 20 years ago. And in this video, like I said, long overdue, I'm going to show you how to make one. You don't have to go out and buy it. It's very simple. Now this call sounds something like this. This is the cutter. That right there, it's very faint, very subtle, and you got to know what you're listening for in order to hear it. Now, how I use this call, Dad talks about it in his squirrel hunting videos, but how I use it, let's say I got a bunch of squirrels up in this tree, and they're all cutting. And I'm sitting here, I'm hunting either with a shotgun or a 22, but I take a shot at one, it drops. What are the other ones going to do? They hear that report of that firearm going off, and they're going to scatter, and they're going to hide. So what I do then, I break out this cutter call. Something as subtle as that is going to make them think. This thing's a confidence booster. It makes them forget about that noise they just heard. So they hear that, and they're like, hey, that other squirrel's over there is cutting. Everything must be all right. So they go back to their normal routine. They come out of that hiding. They come off of laying off that limb where you can't see them. They start moving around again. You can get another shot. So that's how I use this cutter call. Now I'm going to show you how to make it. Now I'm going to give a close-up of this cutting call. You got a nylon all-threaded rod right here. You got a handle, a lanyard, and a striker. This is just PVC vinyl. Use it against there just like that. Them ridges and this vinyl make that sound. Now let's talk about your noise maker right here. Well, you'll need to get nylon all-threaded rod, which means it's got threads all the way down it. Now this came in a 2-foot section. It's 1/2 inch in diameter. You can pick it up from a hardware store. You can pick it up from a hardware supplier over the internet. Like I said, it came in a 2-foot section. They only used, in this call, about 4 inches. So you can figure out, you can make a lot of cutting calls out of a 2-foot section for 12 bucks. Alright, you'll need a lanyard. You can use 550 cord, baler twine, shoestring, anything you want for a lanyard. Something you put around your neck, keep everything together so you don't lose a piece. You also need a handle, which you can go in the woods, you can cut a branch off, inch thick, inch in diameter, and you can make a handle out of it. What you'd have to do then is drill 1/2 inch hole and then glue your all-thread rod in there. But I'm going to show you something that can put something a lot of people just throw away to use, and that is an empty shotgun shell. And if you're squirrel hunting, you probably got a lot of these laying around. But what you can do is you can use that as a handle to hold on to. I'm going to show you how to rig that up here in a little bit. Next thing you'll need to have is some sort of striker, which possibilities are endless here, but I'm going to show you how to use an empty shotgun shell as a striker as well. With that being said, let's get started. Alright, since I'm going to use this shotgun shell hole as a handle, I'm going to slide it on the all-thread rod, put it in my hand, and find out where would be a comfortable place for me to strike this all-thread rod with. And for me, I'm going to have it stick out 2.5, 3 inches from the handle, just like that. So I'm going to mark with my thumb, and I'm going to make a cut right there. Now my length for this all-thread rod is 5.5 inches. And this is how it's going to look inside the hole. It's going to have about 3.5, 3.25 inches sticking out of just the hole. Alright, as you can see, this all-thread rod fits pretty loose inside this 20 gauge shell. You can use a 12 gauge shell if you want to, but you're going to have to do this more. I'm about ready to say. What I'm going to do to this handle, or to the all-thread rod that goes in the handle, I'm going to wrap it with duct tape so it fits tight inside this shotgun shell. Right, wrap a little on there, do a fit test, and it fits in there pretty snug right now. Now if you didn't, then just keep wrapping. If it's too much, then unwrap some. Alright, this is an empty shotgun shell. It's an empty hole. It's been fired. So what we're going to do is we're going to knock the primer out the bottom of this shell, and this is where we're going to attach our lanyard to, and I'm going to show you what we'll use. But the way you can knock this out, you can either use a shotgun reloading press, which I have. It's the most easiest way to do this, but a lot of you guys out there might not have one, so I'm going to show you another way you can drill this out. So that's what I'm going to do. Alright, this shotgun shell has a primer drilled all the way out, as you can see there. Now you got to figure out what you can use to attach your lanyard to, either 5/50 cord or string or whatever. But there's a bunch of different options you have. One of them being, I went to the hardware store, picked up this little eye screw, that big. Alright, I got 14 of them, 15 of them for $1.99. So you can make a lot of squirrel calls with just this if you want to use this for your lanyard. But what we're going to do is we're going to use 2-part epoxy to hold our all-thread rod in here. Then we're just going to set that in there, and it'll attach just like that to where you can run a string through or whatever. Another option you have, if you don't want to go to the hardware store, I know you guys got wire hangers laying around. So what you can do is you can take side cuts. Let me grab one real quick. Take side cuts, cut through the hanger, give you about 4 inches of a straight piece to play with. Then you can bend it into a U. You can use a pair of pliers to help make that loop a little smaller. Then what you gotta do is just trim the excess tail, the excess legs. Leave about 1/2 inch of a leg on there to be able to get glued into it. Alright, it looks something like this. We'll see if it fits in the drilled out primer hole. And it does. And that's something where you can attach the caul to your lanyard. And the epoxy will hold it steady. Now I'm only going to put about 1/4 of the way full of epoxy, mix it around in there, and slide my all-thread rod in. And it's going to fill up around the gaps. It's going to keep this located. It's going to anchor the bottom. Now you're wondering about the hole in the back. Now we made this hole, like I said before, so that we can anchor a lanyard to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little bitty piece of tape. I'm going to cover up that hole. And that'll keep the epoxy in there. Like I said, I'm only filling it up about 1/4 of the way with this epoxy. Mix them 2 compounds together. And kind of work it up the sides a little bit if you want to. Just read the directions on your epoxy, how long you need to mix it. Alright, that should be mixed up enough. Take your all-thread rod, slide it in there. The epoxy filled up, it's squirted out the bottom, but the tape's still holding, so that's fine. That's all I need. I'll wipe up this residue right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you right here. I took the piece of tape off because it spilled off the side. I wiped off the excess off the top, and now it's pretty well level with the primer right there. So I'm going to keep it right there. I don't need a tape because I'm going to store it upright like this, the handle up. So I'm going to set my eyelet right in that epoxy just like that, and that nail will keep it to where I can still fit 5/50 cord, a lanyard, and anything through there. So I'm going to let that set up. The next thing we're going to make is the striker, or what I'm going to call a striker. It's a piece that makes a noise on your all-thread rod. I'm going to show you how to use an empty shotgun shell for your striker as well, because if you don't reload, then you got these empties laying around. I'm going to show you how to put them to use. But the possibilities are endless for this striker. You could use a regular flat washer, and it still makes the same sound. Or if you got PVC vinyl laying around, it'll make that noise. You want something solid. So a shotgun shell right now is hollow. It don't sound right. So I'm going to show you what to do to make this more solid, and so you can get an edge on it, and to make that cutting sound like a squirrel makes. You're going to do the same thing with the primer on your striker. You're either going to knock it out with your reloading press or drill it out. So that's what I'm going to do. Alright, what we're going to do now is we're going to put tape over that drilled out primer, put the epoxy in there, a little more than what we did last time, between 3/8 and half the way up. That tape will keep it in there. We'll fold it over in half so we have a nice edge, turn it over, and then crimp it. And then we're going to insert where we attach the caul to the lanyard, that little eye hook, that eye screw, and then set it in there. And let it sit vertically like this until the epoxy dries. I'm going to make sure I get some of that epoxy on that crimp so it'll adhere to each other and keep that fine edge. Fold it in half, and I'm going to kind of get it started on its side until I can get it flipped over. And then cinch it down. Now we wait. Alright, here it is. Got my all thread rod, my shotgun shell handle. Got a lanyard long enough I can put it around my neck and long enough that I can use my striker with ease. This is my striker. Got that shotgun shell mashed down. It's a little dirty because there's oil on that vise in there. That's alright. It ain't got to look pretty for me. Now that it's all together, let's see how it sounds. Just like the squirrel call that Dad bought from a store many years ago. And we made it out of materials that you can piece together. You may even have lying around. So this is where this becomes fun. You can make this and tweak this to make it your own special squirrel cutting call. You don't have to use a shotgun handle or a shotgun striker. You can use a deer antler, a stick from the woods, a dowel rod, anything. The strikers, I done talked about that. The possibilities are endless. All right, guys. Hope you like this video. Let me know how it works out for you, or if you make any modifications to it. Get out there, sneak up on some squirrels, try your cutter call out, and hopefully you're lucky enough to put some squirrel meat on the dinner table. Catch you in a bit.